You're listening to The Voice of Reason. I'm Dr. Len Saputo here with Francesco Garapoli. I'm astounded at how we believe some of the things that people are telling us. And it's not our doctors who have been deliberating things in an open way that's uncensored. It's from people who are politicians and people who are actors, different kinds of celebrities. Do I want to hear what Tiger Woods thinks about COVID-19? I mean, I like Tiger Woods. He's one of my heroes, but I don't think that he's a doctor and not that he's even doing it, because I haven't seen Tiger Woods do one, but I've seen all kinds of people making statements about this. We need to get real about what's happening and look at both sides of the story and to not take for granted that the information is being proposed by some singer or somebody who's an actor is information that we can believe just because they're famous people. It's a big mistake. How do we get, Francesco, to a place where we're getting deliberation, we're getting uncensored information that's good information? How are we going to get there the way things are going?
I know. It's what we desperately need because people are so afraid, Len. More and more people are getting scared because just when they feel like they're going to be okay, they get told that lockdowns are going to come in again. Yeah. Just when they feel like getting a vaccine means they don't have to wear a mask and they can gather together, they get told it's not true. So this kind of pushing back and forth on some narrative really makes people, I think, throws them off balance. And that creates a lot of stress, as we know. Yep. So who do you trust? You know, you and I talk about this. Who do you trust? And we came to the conclusion that the only people you can trust are people who are willing to debate an issue. Now, wouldn't you say that as a doctor? Wouldn't that be a place that you would have a really solid sense of trust?
Well, usually, and that's what we try to do. You know, when somebody's in a hospital, I put a team of people together and I quarterback that team. Sure. We might have a kidney doctor and a heart doctor and a nerve doctor, all kinds of different doctors collaborating, but it has to be organized. And when I do that, I translate the information from each one of those subspecialties. And then we talk it over with each other. We talk it over with the family, and we decide what the patient wants if they're able to do that. That's open discussion.
And that's normal protocol for any time you don't have a solid answer and you need to get as many perspectives who are expert in that area or providing some information to make a good judgment. What confuses me lately, and I think confuses a lot of people, even if they can't articulate the way we are articulating it, why isn't this happening? Why are people coming out with absolute statements? Because all that does is force you to make a new absolute statement, which usually steps on the one before and contradicts it, which is we're seeing Fauci doing and many people doing all the time.
Oh, I heard Gavin Newsom doing it. I listened to what he was saying. I almost had to throw up. It's sort of like he's telling you what the right thing to do is, that he somehow understands COVID-19 and the vaccines. I can bet 100 to 1 that he doesn't. I'd love to have a conversation with him, see what he does know. And yet he's in the authoritative position that people are looking to for a final answer. It's the same thing with the president, no matter who it is. They're the representative of the different positions that they listen to. And we can't just go on what they think. We ought to be hearing the original discussions from the people who are knowledgeable that are going to be giving us advice. And then there ought to be open debate, uncensored stuff.
Right. And we want to make sure that our leaders are listening to, we'll call it both sides. I say actually all sides, because these are complex situations. Choosing to lock down a society is a complex decision to make. It's got lots of repercussions. Telling people even to wear masks is not just an easy decision. You can't just flippantly say wear it when we know that there are a lot of people who actually get hurt by wearing masks, right?
Yes.
And then you have a whole idea of a vaccine, same thing. You can't just say across the board with a wide brushstroke, this is good for everybody, unless there's sufficient studies. And I think this is what's giving people a lot of consternation and confusion, and even people who watch our show get a little confused.
Yes.
Right. And we want people to feel what we're feeling, which is we don't have the answer, but we dig deep and we look in lots of directions and we listen to people we don't even agree with until we come up with, is there good science behind it? Does it make sense for the highest good? And how does it feel in my gut and my intuition?
Yeah, if it doesn't feel right, there's a problem with it. There's something that's unfinished for you that doesn't bring you
Yeah.
to a place where you have a conclusion. And we have to have that kind of peace of mind. And that's why people are panicking and they're just doing anything to take the pressure off. They want to get back to a normal life. I have so many patients that come and see me and they say, I finally got my vaccine, so now I can do what I want. And then they find out they have to wear a mask still, and they're still
Yeah.
subject to lockdowns, and they're still passing the disease around, and they're not prevented from getting COVID, and that it's not an approved vaccine. And this is an emergency thing we have to do. Really? When I hear stuff like that, it kind of drives me wild because we're not being told the real story here. And we
No.
never are seeing the multiple sides, as you're saying, of what's happening.
Yeah. And what have we been saying for months is these experimental biological agents, or we'll call them emergency use authorized medications. There's no way to call these a vaccine, but those two terms are more appropriate. Now, we've been saying, don't you think we should wait? Does the circumstance require, is it dangerous enough? Are that many people really at risk that we have to run into an emergency use authorization?
That's right.
Many doctors and most data says no. So the good judgment is like what we call this show, the voice of reason, is take a step back. Don't rush into it. But no, people want to rush in and they want to get the Johnson and Johnson vaccine. And we told everybody, please be cautious. Don't jump into something that's going to affect your health this deeply. And people looked at us and said, you're crazy. You don't understand. It's been approved. And we said, no, it's for only for emergency use. Are you in an emergency situation? Well, no, I'm in good health, but I don't want to get the disease. Well, the vaccine thingy won't stop you from getting it. Even with us telling them that, no one listened. And what just happened today with the Johnson& Johnson vaccine?
Oh, yeah, it's a terrible thing. When
Say
you
it, say it, tell everybody.
well, if they're pulling it off the market, at least temporarily. And I remember just a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and the CDC and Fauci and the World Health Organization are saying these vaccines are safe and effective. And right from the start, we said they haven't been proven safe and they haven't been proved effective when you really look at the numbers.
Yeah.
It's a distortion of statistics that gives you the illusion that this is really doing great things. And what it's actually doing, out of 20,000 people who are taking the vaccine, you may be helping a few, about 200, maybe at the most.
Probably less than that from the numbers we've seen.
Well,
Yeah.
less than that. That's right. But I'm being generous with it.
Yeah.
And so when you see that happening, and you know that there are 19,800 people that are taking the vaccine, getting no benefit from it, and are exposed to the side effects of what the vaccine is doing, what the hell are we doing? Who
Yeah.
thinks that's a great idea? And then to find out that now the Johnson and Johnson vaccine is doing things that, oh, we didn't anticipate that. Well, for God's sakes, it wasn't approved. It didn't go through testing. We didn't even do animal testing. And we're finding out that the Pfizer vaccine has got problems and Moderna vaccine has got problems. And there are thousands of people who are having, tens of thousands of people who are reporting what they call side effects. When we have a treatment for a disease like this, and the numbers of people who have been counted as having the disease is way overinflated, probably 10 or 20 to 1. Why do we even need a vaccine? Think
Yeah.
about that yourself. Ask yourself that question. Don't believe me. Go find out for yourself.
Yeah. And if you really feel like you need a vaccine or one of these things, then do it.
Yeah.
We want people to be in their power and be at peace. All you and I can do, Len, is tell people lots of information that comes from lots of places that's very well vetted.
Right.
First thing being, as you said, this emergency use authorized medication from whether it's Pfizer, Johnson Johnson, Moderna, doesn't matter. They all have gone through testing. So that's first thing. Second thing, it doesn't look like the risk is that bad unless you're in a really critical at-risk category that you should even consider this when you weigh the benefits versus the risks.
That's right.
And the third thing is, you know, can you be at peace with the decision that you make? And if you can't be at peace, then you should pause. If you don't need to rush into it, you should pause. And that's all we're saying. We're not against vaccines. We're not against anything. Where we think good policy to help people is number one. And part of that is making good decisions with real information.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
that's right. And if you have enough information, maybe you could do that. But things are getting out of hand. You know, in Los Angeles, it was on the news. They're forcing the vaccine on people who are retarded and disabled and people who are mentally ill. They're actually, the police are going to the homes and forcing the vaccine on people.
I know, it's so sad.
How far do we have to go before we're in a military state where we're so much into communism and fascism that we see the writing that's on the wall now that's taking us down this terrible path? Who do you think is next? It's us old guys, you know, people that are over the age of 65. We're going to be exterminated or forced to take the vaccine. There, people are talking about both those options. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's something that we have to consider. And now when you see the actual thing happening and it's on the internet, holy smoke. If that doesn't wake you up, what does it take?
I know it's tough. I mean, your son David's given us a lot of information. I can't believe how much we've read since our last show 2 days ago.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
the amount of content we've had to go through for this show, and the average person doesn't see this. All they see maybe is stories on CNN with celebrities saying, go out and get this
Right.
vaccine and wear your mask without having any real science behind it. Or you're watching Fox News where somebody on there, good reporters are trying their best and just asking questions. They're not making statements. They're simply asking questions. And then they're getting thrown under the bus just for asking questions.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
Right. So it's a tough one, Len. It's hard for people to navigate through this confusion until you start to stop and say, what do I want my life to look like? What am I willing to do? And stop being thrown around like a bottle in the ocean with all this media from whatever side it comes from.
It's true. You know, I want to clear something up. One of our callers, or one of my friends who listens to the show, sent an email and said, I took both the vaccines. I know you're going to be upset by that. And now I feel terrible about it and I'm frightened. And I want to ask you a question. Where do you get your information? I said, well, a lot of it you've heard us say we get it from my son David. We do. But nothing gets published that we don't review and decide what it's going to be. We don't just take a script from anybody and then start just saying what that is. So we approve what we say on this because it's us saying it, not David, not anybody else. But without his information, we don't get the chance to get the literature together. So it's really helping us a lot. So I hope
that's great, Len. That's really important. I mean, what David does, like any good detective, is provide us with what's happening out there in the world.
Yeah.
Some of it, I have to say, I don't agree with.
Yeah.
But I listen to it, right? I want to listen. I want to hear what everyone is saying. Then I will do some fact checks. Exactly. If a person says something, even if they're a doctor, I'm going to go on Wikipedia. I'm going to go look what their background is. Are they real? What's their history? It's fascinating. I mean, I've done more research in this last year with you on the show than I ever really wanted to do, but it's the only way I could feel comfortable and have any passion about what we're sharing, because you and I and David and our team cares about, including your wife, Vicki, who is a nurse. So, I mean, we've got amazing people on this team. We all care. So if you've got a vaccine already, don't be scared. You did it. This is what you did. Stay in your power. Now your goal, and you and I've talked about this, Len, is to stay as healthy as you possibly can.
That's right.
Right?
Absolutely. And don't take any more vaccines without really thinking about it hard, because now it's already being talked about. There's a mutant, there's a variant strain that's coming out. You're going to have to take a vaccine for that because this one isn't going to cover that. Then there'll be another one to follow that and to follow that. And where does it end? With an experimental vaccine that's used for emergency use only, with no animal testings. You know, I saw a cartoon that really tickled me. It had two rats. They were talking to each other, one sitting up with his arms folded, saying, I'm sure glad that we're getting these studies done by humans, because then we'll find out whether or not the vaccine's safe.
Exactly. I saw one like that. Two rats, and one rat asked the other rat, "Did you get the vaccine?" And he says something like, "No, not until those human studies done."
That's right.
And it was so clever. But the point is we don't have enough information. And if you are in an at-risk category and your risk to benefit, numbers are so much that taking the risk of getting an experimental shot is important to you, then you should do it. If you're not in an at-risk situation, you should think twice about it.
Yeah.
Now, we got some information from David today from a couple of hospitals with the rules to their employees that said you get vaccinated or you are fired.
Oh my goodness. I didn't.
In no uncertain terms, I won't mention the hospitals because it's their business, but there are two big hospitals in two big cities. I was appalled actually that you were told you get the vaccine or you are terminated.
Well, how about you get the vaccine or
Your
you don't
employment
fly,
is terminated.
or you don't take the vaccine? You're not going to get any
Yeah.
digital money to spend. If you don't take the vaccine, you may not be able to go to a football game or a baseball game.
Yeah.
This
It's
is
fascinating.
stages. This is the start of where things are pointed. And it's the same thing with the vaccine. It'll be vaccine after vaccine after vaccine. And if it turns out that the studies on people, on us guinea pigs, turn out the same way that they did on the ferrets and the rabbits and other studies that were done on the COVID-1 virus, all those animals for the most part died. And it was not when they got the vaccine, it was months later after they were re-exposed to a coronavirus. The immune response was so great that it killed them.
Yeah. It's
We don't
it's
know
it,
that that's not going to happen to us.
we don't. And we pray not. And we pray it's all going to be okay for people. But the big thing is if my employer, and I've never really had a job in my life, so I can't even think of what that was like.
I can't
I've
think
always-
of you as an employee somehow.
yeah, it's just not my nature. It's never been. But if I did work for a big company and they told me I had to do something like this, take a vaccine, I would ask them, can you prove without a shadow of a doubt that I am not at risk and that it does what you say it will do? And I'm telling you, just that statement alone, no one can back that and say it in a positive way. Could they, Len? You're a doctor. Could you say that taking this vaccine will prevent me from getting this COVID-19 or prevent me from spreading it?
No, absolutely not.
So I'm shocked that you're told to do something that doesn't do what it says it does, but you have to do it anyway. So I got this really crazy logic thing in my head that says that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, we talked about this earlier, and the answer that you gave me was wonderful. And I was saying that I was talking about the vaccine, and I said, why don't you take the vaccine? And you said the answer should be is which one? Because now that we got the Johnson & Johnson's being pulled,
Yeah.
you can take the other two because they're absolutely guaranteed to be safe and effective, just like they said the J&J was. There's a lot of stuff here that is unsettled. This is not an emergency situation, in our opinion. And doing the extreme things that we're doing is helping very few people and putting most of the people, 99% of the people, by far, into a position where they're only exposed to the side effects of the vaccine with no benefit.
Yeah, that's true, Len. And the big thing is ask yourself, is it really an emergency? If this is an emergency use authorization, can you in your power say you are in an emergency situation?
Yeah.
That's it's going to be a hard one to say yes to because we know hospitals are not overflowing. We know these scare tactics don't match with the numbers that we've seen.
Right.
So, and here's the other thing that I want to bring out that I don't think we've talked about before. People say, well, it's like the flu vaccine where you get a new one each season. Well, people have to know the existing flu vaccines have nothing to do with the Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, AstraZeneca, or Pfizer vaccines that are being touted now. You can't make that. It's like comparing apples and oranges. Am I right?
Yes. And even worse, the vaccines, if you take a flu vaccine, it increases your risk for getting COVID by about 35%.
I know.
So why would you take a flu vaccine?
Wow.
And yet they never talk about that. In fact, other studies have been done after this study came out that said I think it was 37% more people got COVID. immediately outcome studies saying, no, that's not true. It's not true. And it's terrible. You can't believe a lot of what's coming out in the major journals. The Journal of the American Medical Association, I saw an article yesterday came out, or the day before, talking about ivermectin. And they said, we're using it and it doesn't shorten the hospital stay by anything significant. And then I looked at it and they were using doses that were about 1/10 or less of what is necessary to be able to get an effect from ivermectin. And yet it's published in this prestigious journal that you think is terrific. And if you don't look at the doses that were used, you miss the whole point. So what are they doing? Obviously, they're trying to do something to say that the vaccine or that the ivermectin doesn't work. But they didn't even do a study that's fair. It was designed to show that it wouldn't work.
Exactly.
And we saw the same thing with hydroxychloroquine, both in Lancet and the New England Journal of Medicine. So now we got the New England Journal, Lancet, and the Journal of the American Medical Association publishing garbage. And they had to retract the other two. I don't know if they're going to retract this one or not, but I sure hope so, because it's wrong.
Right. And the only reason we're bringing this up is that there are solutions. And as we said in the beginning, listening to a wide spectrum of information, you may find out that there are solutions that have zero risk, because most of these studies we're seeing with ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine show zero risk. They're approved by the FDA, not for experimental use or not for emergency use. They have been approved for years with lots of good data behind them. So, so what you and me get confused about, and what we want to offer to people, is there are more options than you think, and you may not be in a situation where you have to rush to make any decision right now. So you and I are not anti-vaxxers to speak of. All we're simply saying is, if you are not in a critical situation and being pushed to the wall for your life safety or your family's, then maybe you might have a little more time to sit back and wait and take care of your own health and build your positive attitude and get yourself back into your core and your heart and your power.
Yeah, well, that's your message for the Voice of Reason tonight. We have to keep ourselves listening to all sides of the story. We can't be listening to people that are saying, I guarantee it, this is safe and effective. We can't listen to them saying anything that is outrageous, especially when the studies haven't been done. So we have to do our best to do what we can to collect the information and listen to as many sides of the story as we can. We can't just listen to what's on television, and we can't just listen to what's on the internet, because there are holes on both sides that are massive. So you have to have a place where there's a voice of reason, where you have both sides, and then you do a little research yourself and see if you can get the right answer that feels right to you. And if you can do that, it's the best you can do. But if you follow the dots, where they're leading doesn't add up as good science, and it makes you worry about there being a conspiracy of some kind. You know, not that it's been proven it certainly hasn't been proven, and I'm not saying that there is, but it's looking like that. And why do we need to put so many Americans out of work? Why do we have to see an economic collapse? Why are we having to back off and say that the things that we're saying about the vaccines as being definitely necessary and definitely safe and effective? And then without any studies, seeing the answers come out that say, oh, well, it looks like there's some problems with this and we're going to suspend it off the market because we didn't know. Not a good answer. Not okay with me or Francesco.
Yeah, and you know, it was something. If we said that this statement what you just said 9 months ago, they maybe, you know, we could have been put under house arrest. But it's not 9 months ago. It's right now in April of 2021, where Texas has pulled back all their mandates for masks, pulled back all of their requirements for shutdowns and lockdowns, and their numbers are amongst the lowest 10% in the country. Florida did the same thing. South Dakota did the same thing. So now we have data.
How do you explain that?
How do you explain that? And when that question was presented to Fauci, he stuttered a little bit and says, we can't explain that right now.
Yeah, right.
So the point is, we have data, and data empowers us. And when people can understand and come together, knowing real facts and real things like this, that these situations that we claim didn't work and were sounding like they were right way out there. All of a sudden now we have the facts and the proof.
Yeah.
So what do we do, Len?
Well, do what we're doing. We're sharing it
Yeah.
with you. You use your own voice of reason, decide what you think is the best for you. And then we'll have to just accept that that's where we stand.
And stay
So,
positive and really, with all these things we said, right? Just stay in your power, because that's what's going to boost your innate immune system. That's the key right now, that we've got to stay positive. And when fear comes in, take that breath, slow down for a second and say, I will not let this fear take me over. I want to stay in my power.
yeah, well, the stress will tear your immune system apart.
Amen.
Anyway, God bless you, Francesco. It's
Bless you, Len. Thank
such an
you.
honor to work with you. And thank you all for listening. We'll be back again on Monday. So have a good weekend and stay healthy.